All right, so we have now we've created the company, we put in the beginning balances of the chart of accounts and checked those out. We put in our vendors and their beginning balances and the customers and their beginning balances. We checked that everything matches, and we have then created the sales. We've gone through the sales tax wizard and got that all set up. So we are now finally ready to actually do the transaction. So again, remember that we are working with Orangeburg Flower Shop, and here's this first page is all the stuff we just got done doing. So now we're finally going to do the transactions, which are on the second page. So it would behoove you to have this sitting near you to be able to go through as I am going through. Okay, so our first transaction on the 1st of October, okay, so everything that we put in, we didn't really need to worry the period bar. We did have to say for the beginning balances of the chart of accounts what period that was going into, and we set September. So we want transactions to be of October. And so notice that we are in period 9, September of 21. So now we want to move our period to October of 21, and we say okay. Okay, it wants to know if we want to print out September reports, and no, we don't need that. Do we want to do an accounting review on September stuff before we move on? In real life, of course, you would be saying yes to all this stuff, okay? But for our purposes, you can say no to those questions. And now notice the period bar is on October of 21. And we're ready to do our first transaction is on October 1st. And so we sold merchandise on account to Elizabeth Shoemaker. Now, if we are giving quotes and then customers are ordering stuff that we haven't shipped out yet, we might use these quotes and we might use sales orders. Now, we don't have any of that in any of our projects. Okay, we will go over, or I have a video showing how to do this stuff, because in real life you may work for a company that does have sales orders, at least, even if they don't have quotes. Okay, but for our projects, you'll be starting from sales invoices, and here we want to put in a new sales invoice. So our first, when we get up here, we're on the sales invoicing window. Okay, just made it bigger. Okay, first thing it's asking for is customer ID. So I hit my little magnifying glass, and this is Elizabeth Shoemaker. I'm going to choose that one. Okay, the invoice date is already brought up to October 1st, and that's what we want, so we'll leave it. And we set the policy to say that all invoices for customers are due net 30, means they're due in 30 days from the date of the invoice. So this invoice date is October 1st. It automatically added the 30 days and says, okay, Elizabeth Shoemaker needs to pay us back by October 31st. Okay, this other one, invoice number, okay, the NO period, it stands for number, okay, so it's invoice number 222, okay. Now, along here in the middle, if there's a customer purchase order, that would be a sales order to us, it's a purchase order to the customer, then we could put that in there. A ship date, a date that we're going to ship the stuff, if there was a sales order, and the terms are net 30 days. If we want to change that, then we can change that. okay, if we want to have different terms than what we usually have for this customer. All right, we have two tabs, apply to sales order, and you see that's grayed out, okay, and we can't get into that because there is no sales order for this particular customer already set up. If the customer already had several sales orders set up, then we could click on that and then pick which sales order this stuff is being shipped from, okay? So the other tab is apply to sales. So if we don't have sales orders, then that's the tab we need to be on, okay? Now there's a quantity column, how many, and then an item column. If we were on a perpetual inventory system and every item is set up separately, then we could click on, there would be, a drop down area we could click on and pick which item and how many of which item is this customer taking. Now we're in a periodic system, and in case of projects 2 and 3, we're not keeping track of the various inventory items, and so under description we're just going to say merchandise. Okay. Now for your project 2 and 3, it's a book store, so you can say books, okay, or book rental is the service they're offering, and books, they sell books and they also rent books as a service. So you could put those in separately into the invoices. Okay, here, well, we could say flowers, couldn't we? It's a flower shop, so they're selling flowers. We'll say just flowers. All right, and you can hit either enter or tab. The unit price, I don't think I need that. The tax, this is taxable, so I need it to say 1, as we looked in the previous, this means that regular sales tax will be charged. Okay, so I'm going to press enter again, and the amount is $1,000. Okay. Now, a job is if we set up separate jobs for things that we're doing some kind of service or whatever. So, if we had set up separate jobs, like maybe this is for a wedding, a particular wedding job, okay, that we want to make sure that we post this to the correct job. We will talk more about jobs and time expenses later in the semester, so you don't need to do that. Okay, now it goes on to the second line. We don't need a second line. We've got everything in here. Now notice, especially right now, the first time, it says sales tax 0. So we want to click on this magnifying glass, and we're going to click on the SCDOR, and so now it calculated out the sales tax of $50. That's 5% times $1,000. It's $50. And now the customer owes us $1,050. Okay? Now, we can look in this journal button. We should see that we're debiting accounts receivable for $1,050, and we're crediting sales for $1,000, and we're crediting sales tax payable for $50. So let's take a look and make sure that that is the journal entry. So you can see here, yes, debiting accounts receivable for $1,050. We're crediting sales for $1,000. We're crediting account 203, which is the sales tax payable, for $50. Everything looks good, so we can just say okay. Notice on these two white areas, you can change that if you want to. If there's some reason that you need this to go into a different account, so for your project, you have two revenue accounts. You have a sales account when we're selling the books, and you have a rental where we're renting the books, a service. And so if this went into 401 and you want it to be a different sales account, then you have that option to go ahead and change it, and you need to go ahead and change it. So you should double check and make sure at least the first time you run through each customer and invoice and stuff, make sure that you're doing the right thing and that the journal is taking. Now, this account 203 for the sales tax payable, we had set that up in the sales tax wizard, and there's nothing else we can do with that. It's grayed out. I can't change that. Okay, so we said okay on that. Everything is good to go. So we're going to say save and close. All right. The next transaction is on October 2nd, and it said we issued a check to Jill Hand in payment of the balance that we owed her from previous. And it has a reminder, do we get a discount? Okay, so we're going to go into vendors and purchases, okay, and we're going to go under pay bills, okay. Now, if we're not paying an invoice that was already previously set up, we're just writing a check like to the landlord or something, we're going to click on write checks, okay? But in this case, we're going to click on pay bills, okay? And so we're going to say pay bill, okay? And the vendor, make this bigger here, okay? The vendor is Jill Hand, okay? And so we have various things over here on the right. The check reference number is the check number that Jill Hand that we are paying out, which is check number 190. Okay. The date is October 2nd, so we want to make sure that that's in there. We don't need to put in the dollars up here. We have the cash account. Which checking account is this check coming out of? Okay, so our regular cash account, okay? And down at the bottom, we have two tabs, apply to invoices or apply to expenses. So if we're paying like rent expense or something that isn't on a previous sales invoice, then we would click on apply to expenses. And then we would have to say, what account are we putting this in? We'd find rent expense, blah, blah, blah. If this is where we're paying a vendor, then most likely we have a purchase invoice that we already previously did. And we do have this invoice 456. Notice the little Z and the glass, okay? We can click on that and that will bring up where we originally put in that beginning invoice balance, okay? And so over to the right, there's a column for discount. There's a column for amount paid. Now, we owe them $500. If we're only sending a check for $200, we're not going to pay the whole thing off, then I can write in $200. I have to check whenever you have a beginning balance invoice from the previous month where we didn't actually set that invoice up totally, we just put it in the beginning balance stuff, then we need to figure out whether or not there's a discount. So